and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's a quick one from me, quick reaction to Newcastle United's defeat at Bournemouth. I hope you like the new intro, by the way. It's just something I worked on the other day, and it's important to give some quick reaction to that game because it feels like a seminal moment for this team, given the number of injuries that Newcastle. First of all, I think this defeat has come from fatigue, plain and simple. I think Newcastle went into it, hobbling after Dortmund. You got the sense that obviously with Callum Wilson, was he going to be fit, named in the England squad? I doubt he's going to join up with them now after pulling out of the Newcastle game, not fit enough to play against Bournemouth, his former club. And then obviously Miguel Almiron probably won't go with Paraguay now after he came off with another muscle injury as well. These things, the thing that I think hasn't really been said nearly enough is not just the number of injuries that Newcastle are accruing, but also the fact that the players that are still playing every game, Kieran Trippier, Jamal Lascelles, Miguel Almiron, Sean Longstaff, who obviously went over on his what looked like an ankle this evening as well, carried on. Fabian Schär, who went over, in the first half, looked like he might have to come off at times. These players, they're not fully fit themselves. They need rest, and normally they would get rest, but they're having to play through this. And with every game, they go into every game more likely to pick up an injury, and I think that's why we're seeing an injury a game almost at this point in time. And I think that sort of brings up wider questions about Newcastle's, the way Newcastle have been this season, because you can say that, these injuries are unlucky, and obviously a lot of them are, Botman and obviously the situation tonight with Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali, the two different types of suspension. Those are completely different circumstances and out of Newcastle's control. But I do think that you've got to call into question the transfer window, and I think there's time to have that discussion. I thought it was a fantastic window at the time, and I still think it's a very, very good window. But it's also indicative of where Newcastle's priorities were, I think, in the summer. There's more nuance than has been. Obviously, it's been a hot topic every time Newcastle have struggled, and with the injuries piling up, and have Newcastle strengthened enough with Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall coming in, not really making an impact because they're young players and playing in positions where Newcastle have had strength and depth at fullback. And then obviously Sandro Tonali taking time to adjust and then getting banned, and Harvey Barnes getting injured, having not really made an impact himself. That means that Newcastle just haven't had an impact from the summer. This is the same team as last season that's getting overrun and overplayed. And that was partly down to Newcastle's decision making. They drew up plans for the summer with a number 6 and a right winger and a left back and a centre back, and really none of those questions were really answered. They didn't sign another right winger to improve on Almiron. They signed a left winger in Barnes because the opportunity arose. They didn't sign a number 6. They signed Tonali, a number 8, who could do something different. Hopefully, the thing that needs to be said is that tonight was a game where another game where Newcastle missed Bruno because they still haven't won without him. That's why they bought Tonali, was to replace Bruno in these games. And at times he's looked like he could, and he's never really had the opportunity to do that. And then this is another, a really, really difficult reality that Newcastle, it was the perfect opportunity for Tonali to come into this team and showcase what he could do in the absence of Bruno, but he obviously isn't there because he's banned at the moment. So that's, as I say, something that's completely out of Newcastle's control. But also there have been times this season where they've needed someone in the number 6 role. Still seeing the likes of Matt Ritchie and the likes of Paul Dummett and the likes of Emil Kraft, in matchday squads, when then unfortunately the time's probably come for them to move on in terms of playing. And then you've got the likes of Lascelles and even Almiron to a degree where they're probably not good enough with the level that Newcastle have been playing at in the Champions League and certainly want to get to. But they're playing well enough in the system and in the situation to contribute. And the truth is that they should be in the places where Ritchie, Dummett, and Kraft are, coming into the team when stronger, better players drop out. But Newcastle they didn't really think for this season in terms of their transfer policy. They looked further afield for 2025, 2026 with Livramento and Hall coming in. I think that's absolutely fine. But the reality of that is when when this injury crisis began and grew and grew and grew, they didn't really prepare themselves for that this season with their signings. They opted against making 4 or 5 first team signings, and that's just a matter of fact. They haven't really done that. They have been unlucky, as I say, with Tonali, with Barnes, but Livramento has impressed, but he's impressing from a position where Newcastle are already fairly strong. If he's a midfielder or a forward, he makes a much bigger impact in the team, and that's just the byproduct of, unfortunately, the choices that Newcastle made in the summer. They didn't go after their players that they initially needed, and I think everyone was agreeing that they needed a number 6 last season. Everyone was agreeing that they needed another right winger. Everyone was agreeing that they needed to strengthen really strong, go really hard in on a left back and a right centre back as well. And none of those things have really happened. I think they've been really badly, really unlucky up front with Alexander Isak's injury, and obviously the team loses, like every team will, loses so much quality when the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and Alexander Isak aren't there. You add Botman into that as well. That's the spine of the team almost decimated, and that is a perspective that you need to take perspective from that. But Newcastle have been running on fumes for a long time, and it's felt like this game has been coming after Dortmund. That felt like a game too far, and here we are again talking in the same sort of terms against the team that Newcastle should really, if they want to be back in the Champions League next season, these are the games that they need to be winning. I think you can absolutely say it was a fantastic window in the summer. Those players will bear fruit when Tonali comes back, and when when Barnes is fit, and particularly in specifically where I'm talking in the case of the 2 fullbacks, they'll come good in years to come. And I've mentioned that on this channel before, that they've got such a huge future ahead of them. But you've got to also say the byproduct of what they've chosen to do is a lack of impact. Has resulted in a lack of impact in the summer. This is the same team as last season that's struggling for fitness and struggling for intensity, and struggling to and at times struggling to match the exact blueprint of what they did last season. I think that's why you look at this game against Bournemouth and say, and you also now you can put into the context of West Ham and Wolves as well. This is now one away win this season, and of course the Champions League was always going to have an impact, but I think it is absolutely fair to question whether Newcastle prepared themselves in the immediate term for that increase in intensity, increase in games. The other thing to mention, though, is the fact that every single game that they've had in a cup competition this season has been incredibly intense in terms of the quality of their opponents. Manchester City, Manchester United, and soon to be Chelsea in the Carabao Cup, Borussia Dortmund, Paris Saint-Germain, and AC Milan in the Champions League as well. All of those games have been huge occasions with a lot of emotional expenditure in every single game. And I think whereas the Carabao Cup last season, it was quite a gentle run to the final. Every single game going against the league, an incredibly difficult league fixture list, has been really intense with the quality of the opposition, and that's going to take a toll physically, mentally, in every single sense. Every team will miss the quality that Newcastle are lacking. Again, I'm not saying it was a bad window. I still think it was a very good one. I still think it'll prove to be a very good window, but I think Newcastle haven't really done enough as a byproduct of their choices to mitigate against this tiredness and these situations that Newcastle knew they were going into. They knew that this fixture list was going to be intense. This is a really good time for 2-week break, and then Newcastle can bounce back and go into another intense run into December as well. So yeah, just this game felt like it was coming, but I do think that there are questions as to whether Newcastle have prepared themselves properly. That's all from me for a couple of weeks. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break, maybe bring you a couple of videos if some news breaks. But other than that, I think I'll see you back for the Chelsea game in a couple of weeks, and then obviously PSG away, which is going to be really fun as well. So please continue to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.